Chris, I wanted to ask you, as a gay guy, how is it living in Uruguay?
I have never felt unsafe. I have never felt like I couldn't express myself in that way,
This is part of our series on foreigners living in Uruguay. I'm going to be talking to Chris from New York, who's lived in Uruguay for several times, and what's different about his experience is that he's a vegetarian in a country where there are 4 cows to every person. And Chris is also gay, so how his experience is here in Uruguay day to day. Okay, so you arrived in Uruguay 2020 and you got stuck here when the borders closed, and so
Yes.
you ended up being here for a year.
13 months.
13 months, okay. But he liked it so much that he came back. He's back here now for the first time, right?
The plan was to stay for 2 or 3 weeks to check out the country, and then I was here accidentally for 13 months. I left in April of 2021, and I came back about 2 months ago for the first time, and now it's to see the country in a completely different perspective.
Because everything's open.
Everything's open.
Right.
So it's been such a curious, fun, amazing thing, because it's like I'm having a second experience with the country, because I had such a lovely, beautiful, eye-opening experience when everything was shut. And so now that everything's open, it's like, what is this? It's really, really, really a very odd but amazing experience that I don't know how often you could find that.
Sure, for sure. So I've got to get this out of the way, because you're a vegetarian.
Yes.
Yeah, and you come to Uruguay where cows outnumber people 3-1 or 3.5-1. So what's it been like living in Uruguay as a vegetarian? Because a lot of people ask.
Yeah. Well, I would say like my journey to get there, when I first arrived here, I was still eating like a little bit of meat, but I actually met a lot of vegans and vegetarians when I was here before. So they, both international people and locals, so they introduced me to a lot of restaurants. They introduced me to a lot of different things, like particular Uruguayan brands that are selling vegan and vegetarian things. So that has been kind of an unfolding, I guess. And so now I'm full vegan, and that has been interesting because there's even more things than there were before. And so, like I always say when I'm traveling, a restaurant doesn't have to be vegan. A restaurant doesn't have to be solely vegetarian.
A vegan dish.
Yeah, just give me like
vegan dishes on the menu.
Just give me a couple options on the menu, and I feel like no matter where I go, because my friends too, there's friends that are vegetarians and not, they're always like, oh my gosh, where are we gonna go? Is that okay? And I said, I can always find something.
Right.
I'll always find something on the menu.
And you spend most of your time in Montevideo, but I know that you've worked all over, especially the coast in Uruguay and in remote areas, and where you've always had great internet connectivity. But have you been able to get outside of Montevideo? How is it then regarding being a vegan?
So this trip, I've only really been out of Montevideo once or twice.
All right.
I've really been here, but I'm thinking about when I was here during the pandemic, and I went to Punta del Diablo, which is 4.5 hours, 5 hours up the coast.
Yep.
And this was in December, in the middle of a pandemic, and the grocery store was about the size of a closet, right? And I was still able to find enough, fresh food at the grocery store and the feria and those things to cook. I wasn't full vegan then. I was eating a lot of tuna. But I feel like still at the restaurants there was still things to eat. There was a restaurant there that I think that was fully vegan in Punta del Diablo, so there was always something.
And there wasn't a high season going on then because the borders were closed.
There was
so
nobody
that was
there.
a restaurant that would have been open there all the time. So we can dispel the myth that people say that it's going to be impossible to be or difficult to be a vegan.
No, I feel like I had the opportunity to explore that when I was here during a global pandemic. So it exists.
All right,
For
cool.
sure.
Okay, so I wanted to get some ideas of your typical week while you're here, okay? And so perhaps you can take me through some examples of what you do, where you go, where you eat.
For sure. So as a digital nomad, I want to have a life of work, obviously, but then I want to enjoy and explore. So I have a pretty, right now, as I'm continuing to build the business, I have a pretty full schedule. So I'm working a typical schedule. You know, I can kind of make those things happen, but specifically here, I stay in the neighborhood Parque Rodó. And that, for me, is very centralized. But the best thing about it is the park is right there. So like if I have a little bit of a break, I can just go to the park. It's literally right there. Or the beach is right there to go watch the sunset. Everything is... That's something I love about this city is the walkability factor.
Yeah.
That I can just walk everywhere or everything can just take a little bit.
Yeah, and there are 10 beaches throughout the city. Like you can go along the Rambla, which is our 24-kilometer promenade, and you've got beaches strung along it. Which
great.
are decent beaches for city beaches.
For sure. I mean, there's a lot of cities where that doesn't even exist, so it is a huge plus for me. But I just think, for example, just a couple weeks ago, I was pretty busy, a little stressed out, and I was like, I've got to get out of this apartment. I said, I'll just literally walk down the street, go walk through Parque Rodó. It's right there. It's beautiful. It never gets old. I've walked that park so many times, and it's just a very...
Yeah, I lived there for 20 years in that neighborhood. It's really, really nice.
It's beautiful. It's to have that outside your door, no matter if it's cold, like in the winter, there's still so much green. I love that. I love that even though they have seasons here and it is very cold, everything's still green. And you can still have the beach right there. I mean, I'm not going to go swimming, but yeah, all that is right there. So a typical week is work, just like anything else, gym, and then...
You got a gym membership?
For sure, yeah.
And how much does that cost?
I think it's like $40, something like that.
Reasonable gym?
It's a great gym. I could find cheaper, but for me, it's less than a 10-minute walk. So that's really important to me if I want to get to the gym in between meetings or something like that.
Which is the nice thing in Uruguay, or in Montevideo at least, you can live very close to things, so it's all walkable, right?
It's all right there.
Right.
And then something that is part of this culture that I love is merienda.
Tea time.
Tea time. Or as I call it, happy hour before happy hour. And that is just like a very like societal community-based thing that I love. But I find myself I use that time to work as well. Like that becomes a part of my routine that from about 6 to 8, most days is when I can take a computer and go to the coffee shop and just work and focus and have a coffee and there's other people around. Or just, like go have a date or something like that. And then every once in a while, I'll go out to dinner. I was just going to say, this is not a typical, not super typical part of my life, but this opportunity exists. On Sunday night, I had dinner with a friend, and we looked down at our phone and I said, what time is it? It's 1 o'clock in the morning. And we're still sitting in this restaurant, like eating and drinking at 1 o'clock in the morning. So I have to go home and go to bed, but you always have that option, which I like. I like that we eat dinner late, right? That we eat dinner a little bit later here. And then on the weekends... Yeah,
I mean, restaurants here typically open after merienda. So merienda, the tea time, is like 6 till 8, which is kind of crazy if you think of it where British time is concerned, for example. And then a restaurant will open from 8 until people leave normally. Although in general it's often empty other than foreigners like yourselves.
Exactly.
Like going for dinner at 8 o'clock at night.
You walk down the street and the restaurant's empty at 9 and you think, oh, they must not be doing very well. And it's like, no, it's just not time to eat yet.
Right, everybody gets there more like 9:30, 10. How much, can you give me an idea of how much like going out for tea time costs? How much having a nice meal, a glass of wine?
Sure, so if I go out and go have a coffee and maybe like a little snack or something, that's probably, I'm doing math, I'm horrible at math, that's like $8, $10 maybe for a coffee and something to eat, small. And then I just went out the other night to a great place and my friend and I, we both shared 2 things and we had 2 drinks and we split it and it was $18, total for a great cocktail and to share a meal. So I don't think it's...
$18 for a meal and shared drink.
Yeah.
That seems quite cheap.
It was great.
That's not normal though, is it?
I think it also depends where you go.
Yeah.
But that particular restaurant, like that is a vegan place. It's super fresh food. Those cocktails are like handcraft cocktails. And I just looked at my credit card bill the other night and because like, how much was that? and it says $18 on
And
my
you
thing.
that wasn't to do with the 22% rebate back on foreign credit cards?
So that's great, is you get this rebate on my credit card, which
So
I
you
use
get the VAT
everywhere.
back, 22%.
And then I just tip on, and that was with the tip too. So
Okay.
yeah, that was great. And that to me is a really, really good restaurant. You could spend more and you could spend less.
Okay.
But I'd say, yeah, that was about the price I paid because I just looked at it.
Okay, great. Anything else to add about your typical week?
I was gonna say, on the weekends or something like that. Like now, this is a very different experience right now, being back here with the country open as opposed to when everything was closed, and that I'm here in the height of the summer season and everything. But I'm watching my friends, for example, my local friends. They're here during the week, and everybody's up the coast on the weekend if they can be, right? So that's something that I've found a balance of. If it's, work during the week, and then I'm always make time for sunset. That is just something that's super important to me, and it was almost ingrained in me from being here. It's something I enjoyed before. But someone just said yesterday, hey, can we have a meeting? When are you available? And I said, I'm available from this time and this time, except for sunset. Because that's not a time, to me, that's a time to reflect or to connect, right? Just to be with people or to be with yourself.
So could you explain to people listening what sunset's like here in Uruguay? Well, you did tell me, actually, you said to me that for you the best sunsets you've ever seen are in Bali and here.
In Uruguay. I was just having this conversation too. I talk about this a lot. And it's all over my Instagram too. That's all I post is pictures and videos of the sunset. But I was just talking to somebody about this the other day of how we are in this particularly cool situation in Uruguay where we're on the east coast of this continent on the Atlantic Ocean facing east, yet you watch the sunset into the water. And that is like in Buenos Aires, you don't
because of the curve.
The way that it's curved. And it's not
there
all,
is, right.
And that doesn't exist through the whole country, but more than not, you can sit and watch the sunset go into the water, but you're on the east side of the continent.
Yeah.
And that's like, what? So that is a gift.
Yeah.
And to me, it just never gets old. I mean, my phone is so full of videos and pictures and time lapses of the sunset.
And what about that kind of tradition that a lot of people have in Uruguay, right? Of going and clapping.
Yes.
The sun disappears into the ocean.
It's a beautiful thing. To me, it really had an impact on me. It was something I loved before. But then you also watch people just be together. They're having their mate and or going to have a coffee or, just being together and just sitting. At first it was a lot to kind of adjust to because I was like, I've never sat more in my life than being in this country because I'm a New Yorker. I'm used to moving around and walking everywhere and you don't sit still for very long. And so the art of sitting and sunsetting, I think, is something I've learned here. So that's part of my day.
Wow.
And then going up the coast, like this weekend, I'll go up to visit a friend in La Paloma, which is just bus ride up the road.
Right, a 3-hour bus ride.
But it's just a completely different world, right? It's just a moment to just disconnect from the city and to connect to nature and just.
So how did you make a friend that was in La Paloma in a seaside town 3 hours away?
Through your Facebook page, actually.
My Facebook page?
So yeah, that's how honestly my community started here. When I arrived here in Uruguay, I didn't know a single soul. And we've talked about this, that I feel like I have more of a social life in this foreign country during the middle of a global pandemic than I do in New York City, where I've lived on and off for almost 15 years. So I think that has to do, one, with the pandemic, but also just the way the culture is. And those are both local Uruguayan people, but also international people that I've met. But I posted I found your Facebook group. And
right, which is called the Discover Uruguay by Uruguay.
And I found that, and I posted, hey, my name's Chris, I'm stuck here in the middle of a pandemic, hello. And oh my gosh, the flood of responses that I got, but one was from a British woman who was living here doing this as well. She was traveling and the world shut around her, and we became friends, and now she lives here and she has her cedula. She's a citizen now, or she's a
resident,
I
right?
should
She
say.
has an identity card.
She's a resident and she lives in La Paloma. So I have, local friends, Uruguayan friends that also live around the country as well now. But yeah, that is a expat, basically, an international traveler who has residency, and she's living in La Paloma. So I'll just go up there for the weekend.
Right, and come visit her.
Not have to pay any rent.
Oh, very nice, very
I
nice.
just have to clean the bathroom.
So, I think we've talked quite a bit now, maybe about what surprised you for good in Uruguay. Maybe should we look at like what's not so great about living in Uruguay?
I think if you're, first of all, it's what you're comparing it to, right? So I've lived in a lot of different places and a lot of different major cities. One being New York, that's where I've lived the longest. So you can't escape trash. Trash is everywhere in the city. You notice this more than I think I do, and I think that it's gotten better, but there's dog poop everywhere, all over the street.
It's better than it was.
I think it is better.
It's better. Well, and you're saying better than it was in 2020. Yeah. I'm saying that it's better than it was in 2005, for example.
Yikes.
Yeah, but yeah,
it's
a
lot of
issue.
new shoes. Yeah, so I think, the trash, but that's, that can kind of get to you. I don't really have much bad to say, to tell you the truth.
Oh, come on. You mentioned to me about having to go and get something from an office.
Oh, well, those things, yeah. So there can be confusing things. They're not necessarily bad, but like learning a new system, learning the healthcare system, or picking up a package from DHL that you get shipped to you. That is just unlike I'm used to.
Yeah.
And so that is just something to get
But the attitude of the person that you were dealing with was not very helpful, right? And so
I think sometimes there are, because it's such a small insular country, if that makes sense, I think that maybe sometimes there are people in the country that aren't as used to dealing with someone like me.
somebody that doesn't know the system.
Doesn't know the system. And so they are like, well, why wouldn't this person know that where you can send packages, you can't receive packages? Why wouldn't you know that? And it's kind of like, but how on earth could I possibly know that?
Right.
So little things like that can get confusing and a little frustrating and stressful. But I wouldn't say it's bad.
Okay, good. Now, but you speak Spanish.
See.
Okay, and so this is making me think, so you dealt with an unhelpful person behind the desk, and you speak Spanish. You have a lot of friends here that are foreigners. I suppose there are a few of them that don't speak Spanish very well. How do they and I don't mean that particular situation, but in general for them in Uruguay, how do they find it if they don't really speak Spanish?
So I would say if I didn't speak Spanish, that complicated, confusing situation that I was just in, trying to receive a package, would have been very frustrating.
Because you were trying to pick up a driver's license that had been sent you from the States, and that was important.
Very, and I think that if I didn't speak Spanish, I think the level of English here in just the short time that I've been gone, I'm like, whoa, I am actually surprised how many people speak English and how many people are speaking English and want to try and things like that. So I think that...
Is that in social situations or like in shops and restaurants?
Both. Mm-hmm. Both. I do think that a basic level of Spanish is kind of necessary no matter where you are in the world. And I think that there are people that are helpful and understand enough or can speak enough if you need help. But I think, it would be a really good idea to have at least some knowledge while you're here or before you come. And especially because of the regionalism of the accent and things like that, it's a lot different. When I first came to South America in 2019, I thought I spoke Spanish. And I was in Colombia, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can't understand anything. And that should be kind of simple to understand. And after that, I flew to Argentina, into Buenos Aires, which is very similar in terms of the accent and the language. And I thought...
To hear.
And I thought when I arrived there, I said, what is this? So that can be a little bit of a challenge just in terms of it's a very specific...
Accent.
I
always say to people, like, I totally agree with you. I'm a former language teacher myself, and so I think it's really important to... I mean, if you're a digital nomad, it's a different situation, right? You're there temporarily. But if somebody's planning to come and live in Latin America, then you do want to learn, take classes before you come so that you can do it gradually. Don't expect to come and be able to do immersion.
No.
And, you know, and also, if you do take classes, don't take classes with a teacher from Mexico. You know, take classes with a teacher online that is based in Uruguay or Argentina. Because then you're not gonna have the additional barrier of an accent that you don't get.
My Spanish has always been more Mexican than anything. Mexican Spanish, just because I have a lot of Mexican friends. My teacher forever is Mexican as well, and I've traveled a lot in Mexico. But yes, when I was coming back, when I was making the decision to come back here, I got a Spanish teacher who lives in Argentina, who lives in Buenos Aires, because I wanted to reacclimate myself to the accent and to the words and to all of those different things. So that can be a little tricky, but not impossible.
Well, if you're prepared for it, then you make sure you get the teacher with the right accent, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
And I will say, after my Spanish greatly improved after living here for 13 months.
Your Spanish is really good.
I have a thank you, gracias. I have a friend of mine, my same British friend. When we first came here, it's like we came together, but when we first met, she was learning Spanish. And it was very, very hard and challenging for her. And now that she's been here for 3 years, she might speak better Spanish than I do.
Yeah.
And it's incredible to watch how just being around the culture, I don't know if she takes classes. Like just from immersing herself in the culture and people that are speaking Spanish and English, right?
Right.
It's there for you.
Okay, brilliant. So Chris, I wanted to ask you, as a gay guy, how is it living in Uruguay? How do you feel?
I think a great experience before I even came here, this was a few years before I came here, as I remember I think it was a blog, a travel blog that was written by a gay couple, I think is what it was. And I remember them putting a picture in this blog, and it was two guys on the ferry, I'm assuming between Argentina and here, and one guy was like asleep on his shoulder, their arms around each other or something. And they wrote in the blog, well, if this is any indication, if we're seeing this right now and everyone's comfortable with that, apparently, if that's any indication of what the country's like, then we're very curious to go and we'll feel welcome there. And so I think something for me as an international person and living in New York for so long, I feel like there's always designated queer spaces because that's necessary for people to feel safe and to feel comfortable. That those are the only places where they feel that way.
In the US.
In the US, for example. But even in New York, it's completely different, but there are those spaces. Here, it's a smaller place, but there aren't as many. But I also think it's because it's kind of folded into the culture. And it's accepted more. There's obviously people that probably don't, but I have never felt unsafe. I have never felt like I couldn't express myself in that way, and I just don't feel that way. I've had not great experiences in other places in the world where things have been said to me or things have been thrown at me and things like that. Yeah, I have not had that experience here, and I think that one has to do with just the tolerance importance of a tolerant community-based country and city. So yeah, and it's like you go to, there's not specifically, for example, I know they exist, but for example in New York there's gay parties, right? A gay party that you go to, but here it's kind of like the party's for everybody. Why do we necessarily need to separate those things? They do exist. But also you'll go, I was at a party last weekend and we're walking through and I said, oh, we're in the gay section, But I was looking at
of the party.
The party. But I was thinking about this. There was, a lot of different people all in that area, and no one seemed to care. You know what I mean? I didn't see anybody. I didn't see looks or people moving away. It was just that it was what it was.
Yeah.
And that's kind of refreshing.
Yeah, for sure. Excellent. Anything else you want to add before we finish?
I think that this experience of being accidentally stuck here for 13 months changed my life, and in a very unexpected way. And for me, this balance between large metropolitan go cities and cultures like New York, and then being able to come here, and it's like a 180, that you still have a large city that has all of those offerings for you, yet it really just allows you to slow down. It's like the art, what did I say earlier? It's like the art of slowing down and sunsets or something like that. It allows you to take a break and a step away from that craziness and to realize that it's about connection and community, I think, and those things are really important. It's just, in my experience, very important in Latin America, but also in this country. And I think that that's a very important change in my life that happened.
And it's something that's brought you back again.
1000%.
And you'll be coming back again?
For sure.
Oh, that's brilliant. Well, thanks so much.
My pleasure.
I really appreciate your time.
My pleasure. I could talk about Uruguay all day.
Well, so we actually, Chris and I got together earlier today because we have filmed a short clip for Uruguay 21, which is the investment agency here, regarding a new digital nomad residency that is going to be coming out. And so Chris actually talks more about, work-life balance and the internet, the quality of internet and all that kind of good stuff in that video. So we'll put a link so that you can go and check that one out as well. But thanks a lot, Chris. It's brilliant. For more information, visit www.guruguay.com. Check out the links in the description below or the bio.